You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Hey everybody, Matt Priest here, President and CEO of the Footwear Distributors and Retailers of America. We thank you for your patience as we get everything squared away to start our conversation around this 2020 holiday preview as it relates to footwear sales, as it relates to the North American market in particular. I'm super glad that you're here and you're joining us on what is an extremely rainy day here in Washington and most of the part of the Eastern Seaboard, as well as in the Midwest, as I've been told during our practice session. We want you to participate in this session as you see fit. And so we encourage you to send questions in via the chat box, and you can also send them in via the question box on your panel there. And as we get through this conversation and we start to kind of put some ideas out there, we will grab your questions and answer them as we can as we make our way through this. We're also recording this so you can access this after the fact, so that you can go back and review all the extremely wise and accurate forecasts as to what's going to happen as it relates to footwear retail here in our marketplace. And so please do that, and we will, of course, provide that link afterwards. I'm super excited to be hanging out with this group of people in particular because they each kind of come to this discussion with a totally different perspective. And that's what we want out of our conversations is what's the different, each of our speakers has a different background and works for a different company and comes to us at a different stops along the retail supply chain, if you will. And so it's my honor and privilege to introduce our speakers. Carl Shabeta is the Executive Vice President and Chief Merchandising Officer at Shoe Carnival, one of our major American family retailers of footwear here in the United States. We also have Gretchen Jezerk, who's Senior Vice President, Marketing at First Insight. We have Maurice Scheibold, who's CEO of Volumental. And we have Onish Schaefer, who's Enterprise Sales at Klarna. I want to thank you all. Our team is dumping your LinkedIn profiles into the chat box as we speak. So my hope is that you've updated your titles and your photos and everything is up to date there. But thank you for joining us. I'm really excited about the opportunity to have this conversation with you guys.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. So let's get right to it. So FDRA launched our annual 2020 holiday shoe sales survey right here. Here's a copy of the cover. We'll drop a link in the chat box on that as well. And the survey helps us kind of set the stage for where we are as it relates to the current state of the shoe shopper. We are about 2 months from Christmas. My question, and I'll start with Carl, we'll make our way around the virtual room. But my question is, what do you think is the current mindset of the consumer as we sit right now? Is there more trepidation? Is there less disposable income available? We've heard a lot about stimulus, now the lack of stimulus and the impact on the economy. So let's kind of walk through what that looks like. The last thing I'll say is it seems like we've socialized e-commerce a bit. When you look at our survey we asked, do you plan on making your holiday shoe purchase online for home delivery, or do you plan to go to the local retailer? 71% said they're going to buy shoes online, and that's in comparison with 52% at the same time last year. So clearly there's an uptick in e-commerce purchases. Carl, we'll start with you, the current state of the American footwear consumer.
Thanks, Matt. Customers today are not so much shopping as they are buying. The brick and mortar customer visits, they have purpose. For the most part, they do have trepidation. They're well aware of the guidelines and the rules by state and the regulations. They're also aware of the other customers that are in the stores and the behavior of those customers and how they're reacting, somewhat policing themselves, which I find very interesting. The big thing is I think they've pre-shopped in many cases, and they come into the store, they know what they want, they spend less time in the store. The reduced time really translates into increased conversion as they're in and out and they're buying goods for multiple trips. So yeah, we do see that as far as stores go. As far as e-commerce goes, we all know what's going on with e-commerce today. Everybody is years ahead of where their projections were. The survey certainly shows that. As someone who works for a company with 382 stores, I'm hoping it's not 71% online. Even though we are getting our fair share of online business, we still have 382 stores that we need to sell a few pair of shoes in. So I think the customer, obviously they've moved to e-commerce. People are buying things on e-commerce that never dreamed of buying. Personally, I'm buying groceries on e-commerce. I never dreamed I would buy groceries on e-commerce. And frankly, I sort of like it. And of course, overspend all the time. So yeah, customers are definitely moving to the e-commerce platform. The big question I have is, as we get later in the holiday season and we run into supply chain issues that we're all anticipating from delivery services, will that force the customer back into brick and mortar and sway that percentage that the survey said?
It's a great question. I've seen a lot more messaging this holiday season from retailers around make sure you get your orders in soon so we can ensure we get the product to you. And I think that speaks to the point that you just made, Carl. Anish, I'll start with you as we make our way around the room. What's the current, from the Klarna perspective, what's the current state of the footwear consumer as we head into holiday?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks so much for the introduction, Matt. And so great to be here, guys. For everyone that is not familiar with Klarna, just to quickly introduce us, Klarna is the leading global payments provider and shopping service. We give our customers the flexibility to buy what they love now and pay later. In terms of the current state of the shoe shopper, I think it's really interesting as we look broad strokes. In the beginning of COVID, we really saw a rapid shift to e-commerce. And through shopper data, we noticed 4 distinct phases. This was really geared towards with the start of stocking up. Then we moved towards settling in. We then saw a trend towards let's do something. I think that's where footwear really came into play. And more recently, we saw this trend towards treating themselves. We also noticed a very interesting trend towards shopping strategies. That included a focus on looking for sales, using coupons, and buying in bulk. I think also what's really interesting, specifically as it relates to the footwear category, is through our Klarna app, we're able to see trends on what our audience is interested in purchasing in the future. So we have a wish listing functionality. And what I think is super interesting here is that we've seen that footwear items are a top wish listed item, and that sneakers in particular have seen a huge uptick. With respect to in-store shopping versus online shopping, for us, I think the way we see it is that contrary to, I think popular belief, we do not think that in-store shopping is going away. We have contactless payment that's available across 15,000 stores today using the Klarna app. And we're still seeing a huge uptick in transactions that are coming through that particular vehicle.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's really, I've always heard about this retail apocalypse, and it used to be, e-commerce is a retail apocalypse. And then we saw stores shut down. And I thought to myself, well, this is actually the retail apocalypse in March and April. But to your point, Anish, the fact that people are back up and getting out there and getting in the store, and Carl's seen that as well, I think is an important aspect to remind us all that most of the volume of our shoes move through brick and mortar opportunities. So Gretchen, you're at the Consumer Insight point of view with First Insight. Walk us through from your perspective and the data that you have access to as to where the 2020 footwear consumer now rests for holiday 2020.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks for the opportunity to participate with this great group today and talk to your members. And so we've been doing consumer studies since the end of February, trying to track where people's heads are, how their purchase decisions are being impacted by COVID. And we actually even did some work to look at impact of the upcoming presidential election. And one thing when we talk about sort of where are consumers' heads, I wanted to share one visual quickly. And that is this one. where you can see that 63% of boomers, highest of all the generations, saying that they're not feeling very safe trying on shoes in store. Big difference to some of the other generations, particularly Gen X. Also a pretty substantial difference that we're seeing between men and women. Now, these are data from September, but, certainly, at least in the United States, with the uptick in cases over the past several weeks, it's unlikely that this has changed a whole lot. So, this is most likely one of those contributing factors to what's been discussed about the percent moving online. And, another factor that we've seen is that it's important for companies to understand that it's not a peanut butter spread. So, for example, I just heard the report on Marketplace last night about Crocs and, the amazing growth that they have seen in their business for the past several months, to the tune of driving a 27% increase in their stock price and, just amazing growth. And so it's not that all styles and all categories are reacting equally, kind of along the lines of what Anush was saying, right? That people have gone through different phases. And so that whole get comfortable and get out there mode, those probably played into the hands of the Crocs of the world. And related to that, there's some importance of understanding where consumers are in terms of what kinds of discounts they're really expecting. And so, our study was showing again that 45% of men and 37% of women would be brought in store to buy footwear or brought to purchase either online or in store for a discount of 30% or less. So, it's not necessarily the case that you need to go to that 50, 75% off, whatever, really deep discounts to drive sales. And then getting more granular, if you have products that are like Crocs that are going to be very successful right now, then, chances are you've got a scarcity effect going on, right? Where there's probably an opportunity to have that play into your discount strategy or non-discount strategy, and making sure that given the sort of tempest around inventory, do you have enough, do you have too much, maximizing the value out of the products that consumers actually really do want to buy right now, and not necessarily overreacting from a discount perspective is something that is kind of coming to light as we look at the data out there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Gretchen. And we'll talk inventory in just a minute, but it's I'm hearing a lot about scarcity of products, and we'll dive into that in just a second. As we close out this kind of opening round of questions, Maurice, all the way from Stockholm, I want you to kind of walk us through what you're seeing from the voluminal perspective, the technology that's in store that helps you to capture data, consumer data on sizing and other things, and what's the current state of the 2020 footwear consumer?
So what we've been seeing over the last couple of months is that more and more of our customers are actually using our technology to help serve a customer that is afraid of trying on shoes in store. So I think that picks really well up on what Gretchen was just talking about. So what you can do with our scanner is that you essentially can 3D scan somebody, you can show them how they're different from the rest of the world, and you can do all of that whilst keeping a safe distance. And I think that has been a huge advantage for our customers throughout this time period. I think if we're looking at usage on our network, we saw that there was a massive drop-off, obviously, when we had the store closures. But where we are right now, it's very comparable to what we were seeing in 2019 again. So there seems to be a trend in the right direction. What I would like to add to that is a European perspective. So we're based out of Stockholm, and I think when it comes to a second wave, Europe is just a bit ahead of where we are in the US. And I think that has been contributing to insecurities over here in Europe. So we've just seen that Germany and France are shutting down in like lighter fashions, but like in some ways in Sweden, we're getting new restrictions as well. So I think that is the big lever that we're going to deal with in this holiday season. What's going to happen on the health side? How is that going to affect the environment? And how can we, as the retail industry, work with that? I think that's the big question.
Yeah, and those are really important questions. One of the other important questions I want to pose this group, Carl, we'll start with you, is the fact that there's been a lot of talk about, okay, what does holiday 2020 look like? You know, the standard was Black Friday after Thanksgiving, period. If you wind the clock back a couple decades, then it was Black Friday and Cyber Monday, period. Now it's Prime Day in the middle of October. It is Black Friday that is apparently 2 weeks long. It's Cyber Monday that never ends. Did the holiday shopping season start way earlier this year? How do you kind of, as a brick and mortar retailer also does online successfully, how do you guys kind of categorize holiday 2020 as far as the timing on it?
I think the first thing we have to consider is for the last, I would say 3 or 4 years, retailers have been trying to force holiday earlier. You've seen Black Friday deals now. Heck, car dealers are running them in October the last couple of years. So everybody's been trying to move it forward in the past to not very successful results, frankly, as those Black Friday, Thanksgiving Day, and Cyber whatever, Cyber Monday, Cyber Tuesday, Cyber Week, who knows? Certainly this year, I think it's changed a little bit. Prime Days move into October. Obviously, we've all seen the report, just incredible numbers that were put up. We have to ask ourselves, is that the beginning of holiday shopping, or was that just a point in time where people were stocking up on some great deals and it was for personal use? We won't know that till we're all done. You can see evidence today. You're going to see it in ads and in promotion that comes out starting, Sundays, the 1st of November. You'll start to see the people move promotions and things forward. Two questions that I have are: we just finished, frankly, our last back to school in person last week. Back to school has been running for 15 weeks. Is the customer's mindset ready to be done with back to school and jump right into holiday shopping? Do they have the means to do that? Do they want to take a breath, and do they want to wait a little bit? And those are questions we don't have answers to today. We're certainly going to learn this year. We're going to learn every day, every week that goes by what the customer's mindset is. But that late back to school, and again, we had schools that went back last Friday, or this past Monday. They went back this past Monday in person. So we'll have to see if the customer is willing to reload and start again. The other issue is somewhat of a cultural issue where I believe you always need a starting pistol to start a season, right? Easter could start buying spring footwear, maybe not necessarily Easter footwear, but spring footwear. And Thanksgiving and Cyber and DAT, they all start the real holiday crunch. And so will that customer still shop in that time frame? I tend to think a good majority of them will, but they'll shop e-commerce rather than shop brick and mortar because of the safety issues and the trepidation we talked about before.
In my house, we judge when holiday starts based on the slew of Hallmark movies that are dumped on us.
Those already started.
I know.
Those already started.
They're mediocre at best, but quite charming with a house with 3 daughters. So as soon as the Priest family launches into those, we're all in, right? So Anish, let me turn to you with a little different question, but I'm kind of maybe a different angle, same question. One of the things about a forecast is we don't have access to the great Klarna data that we will have in a number of months' time when holiday's behind us. But how are you guys forecasting this out as it relates to shopping? Are you seeing activity now that last year was not? You didn't see that same kind of activity as it relates to holiday shopping?
Sure. So great question. And I mean, just as starting off, obviously this is an unprecedented holiday season for both retailers and consumers. And as you pointed out, holiday shopping is definitely starting earlier this year with Prime Day, known shipping delays, all of the activity that we're already starting to see. Through research that we conducted pre-holiday, we actually found that 33% of our consumers say that they will start shopping prior to Black Friday and Cyber Monday. We're also hearing from our merchants that we're working with that they're starting their promotions early as well. We're actually already starting to see those trends picking up, where we start to look at the number of increases in Klarna app downloads, usage within the app, sales that are being driven by the app as well. All of those are seeing a massive uptick right now, which is leading us to, create the belief that holiday shopping is definitely, it's already begun, and it will only continue to grow.
Gretchen, is that something that you're seeing in your data as well?
It's interesting. I wanted to throw in just one bonus point on impact, or actually non-impact, of the outcome of the election. Found it interesting in our studies that essentially who wins was shown to have very little impact on the amount of spend. But what we did see was that a significantly higher percentage of men said that they were planning on starting their shopping earlier. That they're starting earlier due to the sort of economic uncertainty and uncertainty around the presidential election, to the tune of 35% of men saying that they are doing that, versus only 21% of women. So that's an interesting effect that they're out there saying, yep, I need to kind of get out and get started now. Interesting though that Alex Partners as well was pointing out how 49% of Americans overall said that they're starting their holiday shopping before Halloween this year, which it just has to be earlier than usual, right? And I think that we're seeing too some things like, Target stores announcing that they're going to have appointments for people to come in, and really trying to, spread people out for safety, like we were talking about earlier. I know that relates as well to the sort of whole shopping experience, but it also will have, I think, the impact of, pulling some of the shopping into time periods when that might not have always been the case.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Appointments to get into Target. Who would have thought we would be in that environment, for sure? Maurice, the same question for you from your perspective. I believe I'll have a slide to share that I'll pull up that'll help kind of articulate your answer to this. But we'll kind of walk us through, from your perspective, what you're seeing as it relates to the duration start of holiday.
So what you're seeing here on the graph is essentially normalized usage on our network over time. So it gives you a good idea of when does usage peak for people scanning their feet in the US market, and when does it drop off. And then the blue graph, that's last season, the gray graph that is for this season. So what you're seeing here is that we had an extreme outlier this year when it came to usage in April, May. And then we actually had a really strong rebound from that. And where we are right now, we can see that actually usage is holding up pretty well over the fall months. And if you look at the store portfolio that's using us in the US, it's mainly focusing on the athletic segment. It's running, it's hockey, it's other sports categories. That's the majority of it. And so I think what you can see from that is that in a situation where people are spending more time in the outdoors, in a situation where people are spending more time in activities that you can pursue as an individual, people are going to continue to invest in the gear for that. So I think that is going to be an interesting question for this segment, the athletic segment, how that is going to fare in the holiday season this year, because it tends to be something that actually peaks rather right after Christmas, when people go into the new year and actually have high ambitions for what's going to be better in the next year. But it might actually be in this year that we're seeing more of that flatten out over time as people are just continue to pursue their own sports activities instead of just sitting at home and avoiding other people.
Avoiding other people, sitting at home. Sometimes that can be fun. I've been doing a little too much of that lately.
Exactly.
I do want to remind people, at the end of the day, when we look at the economy, the GDP numbers came out for third quarter today, and they were historic growth. But it just got us back to the same spot we were in at the height of the Great Recession. If that gives you any contextual analysis as to where we've climbed out of, the ditch we've climbed out of, we aren't even fully out of where we were, the deepest part of the ditch of the recession of 2008, 2009, which is a little depressing to think about. Carl, with that, let's turn to you. Let's talk about, I'm going to open this up to everybody. I'm going to combine two of the questions that we were batting around, and so you folks should take them based on their expertise. One, I want to talk about what consumers are expecting in store and online, whether it's experience, whether it's selection. We've talked a lot about inventory. We had way too much of it in the spring and no demand, and now it seems demand is pretty healthy, and we are chasing product and trying to find it to meet that demand. Is the in-store experience all about selection, or online is about selection? Is it about price? Is it about not getting COVID if they're shopping in your stores? Talk to me about kind of what the expectations are of your customers.
Well, they haven't really changed dramatically, but maybe I can say they've become more intensified and more focused. Okay, first thing I have to say is I have new pressure on me from Gretchen because I'm a last week shopper for Christmas. I have to go out and shop earlier, so thanks for that. But they stay the same. Consumers are expecting to get what they want, where they want it, when they want it, at a fair value. And that doesn't change. What might change is you might not get a second chance at them if you don't satisfy them the first time. With the amount of trepidation we talked about earlier coming into brick and mortar locations, many of them don't want to continue to shop. They want to find it and go home. The other part is, and again, I'll go back to Gretchen's comments on this. During the COVID shutdown, we're very fortunate at TrueCar didn't furlough anybody. We all corporate office went remotely and worked incredibly effective remotely. I give all the credit to our IT organization. But we were able to quickly identify things on very select categories, very select brands, very select products, and continue to work with our vendor partners to limit the liability that we had on that spring seasonal product that really, as you referred to, Matt, added to a glut or too much inventory out there. And at the same time, we were able to adjust our fall assortments and adjust much more to what the customer was looking for. Mortar in the stores go, I think it's not about how much inventory you have in the stores this fall. It's about how much of the right inventory do you have. And we're there. I think when you talk about e-commerce, it's a little more about assortment. It's certainly about those same products, but the e-commerce consumer has more time on their hands and has more of a desire to shop. Although they are still focused, people are focused on those same categories that they have been focused on. So again, we're fortunate that we were able to adjust our company and adjust our inventory levels to the right inventory in the right products.
I appreciate that, Carl. We got about 90% of what you said based on some freezing. So either Cliff didn't pay the Wi-Fi bill or it's a storm rolling through Evansville. But we appreciate your insights. Anish, from your perspective, won't talk specifically about inventory, but maybe more of a consumer perspective.
I'm not sure what you missed.
So Anish,
Didn't miss.
we'll pivot to you because Carl's breaking up. Talk to us about what consumers are expecting maybe from a payments opportunity. And if you think about kind of the depressed nature of the economy, I think flexibility in payments is probably pretty critical to folks whose dollar they'll need to stretch a little bit further this holiday season.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think Carl brought up a great point here, right? And it's this idea of satisfying the consumer. We think about that in the context of, everything that we do at Klarna is focused around this idea of providing a seamless shopping experience. But I think you can provide oversight on that as you think about providing, more options in that seamless shopping experience. So whether or not that is, how a consumer gets an item delivered, or how they can pick it up, curbside, or contactless payment, or things like flexibility in spending. And specifically with, the Klarna audience, we are reaching a majority of, a generation that is millennial and Gen Z. And so for them, they're more risk adverse. They are, less and less using credit cards. And so they're looking for different ways to pay and more flexible options. And so I think there's some really interesting data that we've seen on our side that's showing that, if these consumers had the ability and the flexibility to pay over time, there would be increases in spending this holiday season because those people could get what they want now and have the opportunity to spread those payments out over the course of time.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think it'll be more and more important as the economy continues to struggle. Gretchen, from your perspective, again, you have a ton of great data at your disposal, a lot of great consumer insights. What are you hearing, or what's your data telling you about what the experience people are looking for, whether it's selection, assortment, in-store protection, free shipping, whatever, all the things that are so important to meeting the consumer demand?
Yeah, I mean, I think that both Carl and Anush were spot on about, it's about having the right inventory, not the how much inventory, but the right stuff in the stores as much as possible. And then, certainly really satisfying the customer across that entire experience, right? Which expands across, do I feel safe in your store? And, can I afford to pay off this whole credit card bill right now? Or might I want to make use of some plans that spread that? If I may, I'm going to also kind of connect the dots a little bit back to what wholesalers and retailers are faced with right now, and maybe a way to help deal with that. So the fact is that as the COVID situation was ramping up, many companies were ramping down on their orders, right? Because sort of foreseeing that there would be problems on the horizon. And then that has resulted in what we were talking about before, with this sort of lumpy inventory, in the sense of maybe too much of stuff that's not as strong selling as an item, and running out of other things. So it's still possible to really engage in a digital way, with data, with information to share with your retail partners if you're a wholesaler. So this can be a win-win conversation if you go in and really come in with some data about what customers are actually looking for. And some of that's historical data of what's been selling in recent times over COVID, and some of it can be information that you get from a company like Klarna or from a company like First Insight to be able to help inform those conversations, to frankly kind of make the most of what we have in hand right now as the way of inventory, and really try and get the right stuff in the right place to meet those customer needs, in a way that's going to have the best, frankly, financial outcome for both the wholesale companies and the retailers. And that's one of the challenges that I think we're faced with, but there are opportunities through digital showrooming kinds of concepts, right? To be able to, Dan Post-Boot talked about that when they did a webinar with us, that they set up a space where they could actually then do this kind of a Zoom meeting and, bring in their retailer partners to try and get as good a feel as possible about the products that they had available, and then, still get the product placed. I mean, there's still some amount of time to affect that, even for this holiday season, especially since we said it's going to go on forever.
That's right. It's never too late. It's never too late. Moritz, you were nodding during a lot of what Gretchen was talking about. And both Anish and Gretchen have talked about kind of the force multiplier effect that is Klarna and First Insight. I want to pose the same question for you, both on the customer experience, but also the tools that Volumental provides for that force multiplier effect, particularly at a time when everything seems to be going digital.
Yeah. I think what a consumer expects today is shaped by their digital experiences. And I think that is just accelerating now throughout COVID, because we have so many people actually experiencing the magic of digital modern experiences that were just not active in those channels before. And I think in consequence from that, what you're seeing is that a consumer is expecting personalization, actually. A consumer is expecting that when you interact with them as a brand or as a retailer, that you're not putting forward a fits-all message, but that you actually show an understanding of, okay, what kind of products have you interacted with? What kind of products are you interested in? And then if you work with a company like ours, you can go beyond that and you can actually say, okay, I understand your body shape. I can show you products that fit just perfectly for you. And I can even visualize that for you. And I think those kinds of experiences where you move away from the position of just wanting to sell something to a consumer, and instead you become more like a trusted partner and advisor, somebody that can make data-driven decisions and explain that to a consumer. That's really what people get excited about. So it has to be something of value that you give to a consumer, where they have an experience with you that allows them to understand the products that they're going to buy in a better way than they would before. And I think that expectation is shaped by what's happening online, but that's coming more and more into the store now, as well as people have been experiencing such solutions in online spaces.
Gotcha. Now we do have a number of questions coming in. I have a few more questions that I'll pause on and I'll get back to you in a bit, but we have quite a few questions coming into our Q&A chat box. Some of these for Carl, but I encourage others to jump in as you see fit. Carl, Shoe Carnival seems to be one of the healthiest footwear outlets. Is this a time you feel you might be more aggressive to take advantage of the competition being vulnerable, or do you stay the course? Is it cutthroat, or do you remain on the mission?
I think we remain on the mission, and I think we try to do what we do is good, better than we've ever done it before. We know we've acquired some additional consumers or customers shopping with us back when we were able to get the stores open in May quickly because we had the staffs in-house. We didn't furlough anybody, so we were ready to go. So I'm sure, we know we captured some new customers, and we certainly want to protect those customers and have them be with us forever. I think the important thing is in the thing that Shoe Carnival does well, and in what the management team is focused on is being who we are and being a better who we are, rather than changing our model or changing our target and forgetting about who brought us here. So we fortunately, the company was in a financial position that we were able to make some headway during this, and we're a conservative company, so we'll continue to move forward in this direction and hopefully accomplish maybe both our staying the path and maybe taking some extra market share.
I like it. I like that. Well said. Knowing you guys, like I do know you, I know you've made investments for a number of years now on a comprehensive CRM system, so consumer engagement, expanding your e-commerce, deputizing each of your locations to be mini distribution centers. I think all that is, not knowing COVID was coming was really important. I guess to the rest of our panelists, how important is it to be investing in technologies and force multipliers in this environment, not knowing that anything can now happen, right? Everything's on the table, from pandemics to natural disasters to recession. It seems to me that there's really, the imagination can run wild based on all the threats that are out there if I was to catastrophize everything. So Anish, we'll start with you. Kind of, it seems now's the better time than anything to be reminded why investments like Shoe Carnivals a number of years ago have paid dividends in something like this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we think about it in two ways, right? I think one part of it has to do with the consumer, and the other part of it has to do with the merchant. And, for us, when we think about the consumer, it's about how are we meeting their appetite for flexibility in the way that they pay. We know that with millennials and Gen Zers, they have lower credit card adoption rates, as I had mentioned earlier. They're more risk adverse. And so how are we offering them more flexible options in the way that they pay? So I think that's the first part of it. I think the second part of it is then how do we then serve as a growth engine for retailers through our data and our marketing. When a retailer, works with Klarna, we're not just a buy now, pay later solution. We have 90 million customers across the world. 9 million of those are here in the US. We enter into these partnerships and think about how we can promote our partners through all of our different channels, whether that's through social media, through our app, through marketing that we have going on. We have a real B2C strategy. So we're thinking about how we can bring our merchants into the mix. Additionally, with our data, we think about how can we offer all of the insights that we're collecting and provide those back to our merchants to help them inform in real time how they're making quick changes to be able to meet the consumer needs for what they want now. Because as we can obviously see, things are rapidly changing so quickly. And so as merchants, as companies, we need to be able to quickly react to that.
Yeah, well said. Anyone else want to take that question?
I'd like
to. You go first, Gretchen.
Thanks, Moritz. So, spot on about the importance of these investments. And one thing it brings to mind is, our CEO, Greg Petro, wrote an article not too long ago in WWD where, he really talked about the fact that COVID has been a magnifier and an accelerator of a lot of things that were happening already. So as we talked about with, the move toward online sales toward digital commerce certainly was underway, but it just has been completely ramped up. And, I spoke recently with one of our customers who had already started the investment in becoming digital first a couple of years before COVID hit. And so then they, just like Carl talked about, we had our people because we didn't furlough them. They had their technology infrastructure already with a lot of strength behind it heading into COVID, and were able to then really, really capitalize on that. But it's such a critical time to stand behind those investments, as hard as it is when companies are hard hit. It's really not the time to slow it down. It's actually the time to ramp it up, because then, companies that are doing that are actually coming out of this crisis ahead. They're actually able to leverage it as, or view it as a catalyst, right? For, okay, what more can we do with our digital transformation? What can we work on now, to be positioned coming out of this in the best possible way? And a last force multiplier that I'd like to mention is, we do help over 100 companies globally, both on the wholesale and the retailer side, to really understand before products come to market, what's resonating with consumers, what are they willing to pay, what features do they like or not like. And so, the 1 + 1 = 3 is really when you have a wholesale vendor who's testing with First Insight and showing up to, say, a Kohl's, for example, with data about how their products have actually performed vis-a-vis Kohl's consumers. And then there's a very robust conversation informed by data about, what the assortment should be for Kohl's specifically. And then, given that Kohl's also does their own testing, they've got data as well, and this becomes a really strong conversation that gets to what Anush was talking about. make sure that the consumers are finding what they want in your store. So that's really key. And I'll just mention we're going to be doing a webinar actually with Dan Plass of Kohl's on the 17th of November. So if you want to hear a little bit more about that, you're welcome to tune in for that one. That's
cool. And Gretchen reminds me, and I've seen footwear executive extraordinaire Greg Tunney in the chat box. He's on with us. And who says Carl's the man, for one thing, which I agree with. But also that talking about a case study with Hush Puppies and what he did with First Insight in that space and the efficiency and talking about inventory and sampling, all the stuff that pushing things aside that won't sell and having that data beforehand. And I think is really critical, particularly in a time like we face right now, where we're trying to build in even more efficiencies in the supply chain. So that's a whole different case study we can provide access to as well. Moritz, last but not least on this question, you had something you wanted to add?
Yes, what I wanted to add to that is I think if you did the investments before COVID, you fared better now. I think what we're seeing right now with companies like ours that are selling technology to people within retail or brands is that demand is higher than it has ever been before. So everybody else out there is investing in their technology stack right now. And I think if you're missing that train, the next 5 years are just going to be a really rough ride, because I think the consumer expectation is going to change so dramatically right now. There's so many people that are investing very heavily right now, and I think that's creating a new reality.
Yeah, that's so true. There are many new realities that we are facing personally and professionally and as consumers. Carl, we've had a couple questions come in that I think you can handle at the outset, and then folks can chime in as they see fit. Talking about pricing and markdowns, there are two of them that are a little different, but I'll pose them to you consecutively. Is the perennial cadence of seasonal markdowns open to change? The questioner says, typically, regardless of what kind of winter it is, boots are marked down, same week every year. Can that timetable change to allow for regular price sales into January, February, March as consumers wait until the need is present? Is the first question. And then the second question, somewhat related, but does the shortage of inventory and the desire not to shop mean that there will be increased full price purchasing? A little bit different, but same ballpark, I would argue. So I'll let you take those and then allow other folks to jump in.
Sure. I'll take the second one first.
Okay.
The second one, again, goes back to the quality of the inventory in the in-demand products and the discipline. And the discipline, which is a hard word for big retailers to follow, the discipline to make sure that you're monitoring all the data and you're maximizing the value of that inventory. And we have seen countless times since coming back from COVID, all the way back to April, May, that if you have the products that are desirable, and I've said this before, they're very desirable, and when they are at a shortage, they should be at a premium. And there's no reason to waste markdowns on that. And again, retailers get locked into timetables. This also plays into the first question. They get locked into timetables and sometimes become their own worst enemy. I can tell you that back in the summertime when we reopened the stores and got sandalized product in the stores or from our DC into our stores, we pushed sandalized markdowns on the majority of the products 60 days later than ever. Certainly, if we had some inventory that was distressed and the consumers weren't reacting, we reacted to that quickly, but we maximized the opportunity later in the season. And, we've always said that in retail, we need to do our pricing when the customer wants to buy. And in many times, when the customer is ready to buy, we're already marking down, and which is at some point we need to align that a little bit. I can just speak for Shoe Carnival. We were able to do that for spring and summer, and I don't know about March, but if the consumer delays like they've delayed all year with sandalized product because of COVID, with the back to school timeframe, we certainly need to be careful with our discipline on boot pricing. The question was January, February, March. I'm looking at December, January, and not getting to the first of December when we haven't seen the first snowfall, and people reacting to liquidate inventory when the customers are ready to do it, ready to buy it. So I'm hopeful. I can only speak for us, and we will be disciplined and be smart, good, strong merchants. And fortunately, we have flexibility, and I'm a little biased, but we have the team in place to keep that discipline.
And I think the results have shown that for quite some time, Carl. How are others approaching those questions as it relates to, does anyone else want to kind of answer as it relates to markdowns and pulling the trigger too quickly, or some of the built-in cadences that retailers build out into the system that might be antiquated in a year where there's a pandemic? Any other thoughts before I get to our final question for all of our panelists?
I'll chime in. I think for us, in the beginning of the pandemic, we saw specific shopping strategies, right? So consumers were looking for sales, they were looking for coupons, and they were buying in bulk. They were also looking for different types of values, so deals, loyalty programs, club-related discounts. I think as Carl articulated, I think what's very important for merchants right now is thinking about how they can react in real time using data and insights to really inform what quick shifts they're going to make. So not being stuck in something necessarily, but being able to make those quick changes.
And I'd just add, Matt, that there are some of the tools out there like First Insight, where you can get very quick turnaround, a sort of, a 24-hour answer on, what are people willing to pay specifically for that style in that outlet. And, that can really help to inform, to your point, better data-driven decisions coming from consumer input.
That's really interesting. Maurice, we'll start the final question with you, and then I'll move my way north up my screen. What are kind of 2 or 3 key takeaways you hope that our viewers will gather from this conversation as we continue this unprecedented journey in our lifetimes, to put it dramatically?
I think the first one is that consumer expectation is changing, and that creates an environment where consumers just expect a much more personalized experience going forward. It's all about understanding your consumer and then making sure that you hit them with the right message at the right time in the right channel, and then they build trust and they will engage. And I think the second part is shifting towards technology. That doesn't mean that you today need to hire 10 developers for your retailer or for your brand. There's tons of tools out there. There's tons of companies that are focusing on building fantastic technology for people that are in the footwear industry. And it's a much more promising, a much faster, a much better path to actually find great partners that you enjoy working with and then work with them, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and do everything in-house.
Got it. Well said. No one wants to reinvent wheels, particularly right now. Gretchen, you're up next. What about you? What are 2 or 3 takeaways for our audience?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to really lever off what Moritz said. Number one, consumers are changing. What has changed even about that is the speed of the change, and that, that's something that creates both challenges and opportunities for retailers and brands out there. But really, not just understanding once and thinking you're done, but actually this kind of constant, sounding, pinging to make sure that you're in touch with how those expectations and preference are changing. And in terms of investing in technology, there's also a big force multiplier in connecting the dots and really integrating across that technology stack and your technology ecosystem. And we're seeing more of our customers than ever really wanting to integrate, from our solution to the 3D imaging solution, so that they can test using 3D and not even have to make a physical sample, so they can be faster. They're integrating the information into their PLM system so that they know that they've got that information right in front of everybody when they're making the line decisions, and they can make better decisions faster. So, there's that force multiplier of just connecting the dots of the technology stack that you've been investigating rather than treating them as point solutions. So those are two comments I wanted to share.
Got it. Thank you, Gretchen. Anish, you're next.
Yeah, definitely. And I will echo Gretchen and Moritz because I think they bring up great points. I think for us, the way in which we view it is, how can you provide the consumer with a more seamless shopping experience? And I think that can trickle into so many different facets and can manifest in so many different ways. And I think secondly, it's thinking about how technology really helps to inform how you can move your business forward. As we all articulated, now is the time when companies are investing in making these decisions that are helping to move their business forward so that they can adapt quickly to the changes that are happening within our economy, within our world. And so, I think it behooves you to think about what you're going to do now that's going to change the outlook, and think about your future of your business, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, et cetera.
Got it. Well said. Carl, last but not least, and other than go to shoecarnival.com for all your holidays, what are 2 or 3 things you should take away? And
you could use Klarna there as well. I just want to let you know that. Looking at a short period of time at the holiday season, which by the way is here, I think we need to understand we're at a place we've never been. Right. Early on in this COVID thing, we sat and had countless meetings and projected on what we thought was going to happen. None of it came true. Some of it was actually mostly better than we thought. So that was a good thing. However, we have to understand we're a place we've never been before. There's so many external factors. When you talk about who knows about the election, and the fourth quarter is always in the footwear industry a weather issue, the economy, COVID. The season's going to be different. As much as we can survey and analyze, it's going to be different. We can push the consumer to a degree, but at the end of the day, they hold the cards, and they're going to decide what the holiday season looks like and where and when they're going to shop and in what format. As a retailer, there's 2 things we need to do that aren't in many of our DNAs, especially big companies. We need to be flexible and we need to be patient. And that's the way we can maximize the holiday season this year.
I love it. Flexible and patient. Folks, this has been a really important conversation. So important that I actually put on a coat, which is I can count on 2 fingers how many times I've done that since March. But Carl, Anish, Gretchen, Moritz, I want to thank you so much for coming and spending time with us today to share your insights and your expertise on an unprecedented year. Each of their profiles has been dumped in the chat box from LinkedIn. I would encourage you, maybe not necessarily Carl, but the others, to engage with them over LinkedIn and connect with them and talk to them directly about their solutions, because we are finding that these are such key solutions for unprecedented times. And so to our panelists, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Sure. So folks, we've been recording this. You will have access to it after the fact, and we will be posting it in a variety of different channels as well, so you can check that out. Tuesday is election day here in the United States. Please go and vote. Go to shoevoter.com to get information about where your polling place is. It might have changed because of COVID, whether or not you can still early vote. All the different things that are required of you as a citizen of our country to get access to. So shoevoter.com for that. And until next time, we wish you a happy holiday season and many success selling lots and lots of shoes. So have a great day.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.